All right, and we are now live. So thank you guys for joining me tonight for our June movie club, where we watch Some Like It Hot. Before we get started on discussion, I'm going to go through my little housekeeping rules that I go through every time we do one of these calls. So this is our movie club. We actually had our music discussion on Friday, so that should be up on our YouTube, and you'll be able to watch it. And if you watch it and you have some comments that you'd like to add, we listened to Elvis Presley. But if you have thoughts on that you would like to add, you can absolutely comment on it. And I do my best to try and check them. We don't have them on Facebook anymore, so I don't get the notifications. But if you do want to comment on it, I love talking about media. I am always down to talk about media. I would love to discuss it with you. And that goes for any of our past picks as well, which can be found in our Facebook group. So you can find us on Facebook. I left the note there. /group/Dragonfly Arts. We have our movie club. We have our album listening club. We also have a quarterly book club that will be meeting at the end of next month. So you definitely have time to jump into the book and join us for that. It's Easy Riders Raising Bull by Peter Biskind. I am probably a little over 40% of the way through this, and I am learning a lot. So looking forward to discussing that with you guys. I announce new picks on the first of every month. So this coming month, you would be able to see it on Tuesday. Surprisingly and interestingly enough, not from me. I am taking.
Who might it be then?
I am taking a month off of making our media club picks, and Tim's going to take over for me. So you can look for that post from Tim. But I will go in and add it to our guides tab in Facebook, so you'll still be able to find it there. And let us know if you'd like to join us, and we'll figure out a time and date to have a discussion about our next picks. So I'm looking forward to that on the 1st. We don't just have these media clubs. We also have weekly calls about being a creative. It's a Facebook group, so you can post on the Facebook group itself asking for support or anything along those lines, make connections with other creatives in the field. We are Los Angeles based, but we have members from all over the world. If you are in Los Angeles, we do have meetups that we talk about on there as well. So absolutely join us on our Facebook group. And if you like us and you like what we do, you can support us over on Patreon for as little as $2 a month. We don't have any sort of perks or anything that's specific to our Patreon, but we appreciate any help that you can give us. So yeah, for as little as $2 a month, you can help Beckett and I keep this going. But without further ado, let's talk about Some Like It Hot. Or wait, I actually have a better. Let's talk about Some Like It Hot. Have you guys seen this movie before?
Yes, this is my third time, I think, viewing it.
Yep. I watched this a long time ago with my dad.
Similar story for me, yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I've seen it before. It's been I apparently rented it in 2011, so it's been 14 years. But yeah,
I might have seen it when I was a kid. But I'm not sure and don't remember. So it was like I was seeing it for the first time this time.
Did you like the movie?
Who, me?
All of you. Just
Okay.
general question for the group.
I love this movie.
Me too.
And my cat was named after Marilyn Monroe, so my previous cat.
Norma Jean. Good cat.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I really like it as well, and I was kind of in a similar boat of having forgotten almost everything about the plot. I didn't even remember that it was a period piece, taking place in 1929, and it had the mob story about the St. Valentine's Day massacre type of deal. I had forgotten everything about it other than a few key scenes, but yeah, I really liked it during this rewatch.
as Billy Wilder comedies go, and I don't really care for them, I actually like this film, where I can't say the same thing. 7 Year Itch is okay, but the rest of them I can't deal with.
I wouldn't say that I love this film, but I did enjoy it. Like, I think it's a generally good film. I mean, for the fact that it was released in what,
59.
1959?
Mhm.
Yeah, I was like, I'm pretty sure I wrote that down somewhere, but I apparently did not. I guess I have it in a slide on here, so I didn't think about it.
It's on my
Um,
TV. It just finished. It's on
Oh.
mute behind my. At the very end of that part.
It said released on 1959. Yeah, so for a movie that's in 1959, it has definitely withheld the test of time. It's still a pretty solid comedy in that regard. It is an interesting thing that it takes place in 1929, and that is kind of an interesting. It was based on a German film called Fanfare der Liebe, that I believe also takes place in the 20s, although it was released in 1951, and I feel like that might have something to do with it. Like, what slide should I settle on? Let's settle on this one for now. I know that Beckett is a fan of Marilyn Monroe. Is this like up there for you in terms of Marilyn Monroe movies?
Yeah, I mean, she's fairly the same in all of her movies. So if you like Marilyn Monroe, you know.
All right. I have a whole list of fun facts, and most of them are about the making of it. So before I get into those, I want to talk about like the movie itself and like aspects of it that you guys liked and didn't like.
Well,
Tony Curtis, amazing performance.
yeah, I would say all the actors were pretty amazing. I was gonna say I really, really loved like the first 10 minutes or so, especially the opening scene, which has no dialogue and it's just the gangsters who look like they're going to a funeral with a coffin. But then there's actually a very impressive car chase with like those old cars spinning around, and the coffin gets shot with machine guns, and the alcohol starts leaking out and stuff like that. I thought that was incredible visual storytelling with like, well, like I said, with no dialogue. So
yeah, that was some pretty impressive stunt driving for that time period.
Yeah, like the cops were hanging off of the edge of the car while it spun around, and then they got off the car and started shooting their guns in the same shot. Yeah, that was super impressive.
Yeah,
I found it kind of amusing that when the cop car crashes, nobody seems jarred by it. Nobody flies off the sideboard. Nobody, not sure. It kind of the first time it defies reality, this film. But other than that, it was a very impressive car chase.
Yeah, I love the slapstick kind of aspects of this movie. I am a huge fan of like Buster Keaton old film and just like the dangerous stunts that got pulled in them. And so the car chase at the beginning, the fact that you can do so much of that storytelling without having any words, but also like the chase scene at the end where they're climbing the like down the side of the hotel, or even just all of the girls getting into the same part
into
of
the top bunk together. Yeah.
How
did they do that?
I know, right? I was thinking about that. That's seriously, that there's no room to even drink.
I actually added these slides in because I always found it interesting that this movie was in black and white.
Right, I thought about that too.
Yeah.
Is there a colorized version of it or no?
No, there's not. What it is it was supposed to be filmed in color. Marilyn Monroe actually has it in her contract that all of her movies have to be in color. But I don't know if you can really tell from this photo here on the left, but the makeup that Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis were wearing did not quite look good in color.
Oh,
They convinced Marilyn Monroe to change her mind and do black and white just so that the makeup could look better.
You know, I
that
was
makes a lot of
wondering.
sense.
I was wondering about the black and white thing because Wilder's previous film, 7-Year Itch, was in Technicolor, beautifully stunning, saturated Technicolor.
That was Marilyn Monroe's whole thing, was that it had to be shot in color, and then they managed to convince her not to do that. And I never really thought about that being like an issue on the production side. I thought it was just a decision for the time frame, but it was always kind of an odd decision in my head. So,
Well, there you go.
I think it's really funny looking at this image where like just their face paint is so white. Like it feels unnecessary. Like all the women are wearing makeup, so why do the men look like this?
It definitely does not, it definitely works better in black and white because I didn't even realize that they had all that makeup on and watching the black and white.
Maybe trying to get the face to look feminized, or just thinking about makeup-y stuff, having worked with makeup, stage makeup.
It's also really funny to me because, like I said, I did a lot of research on the background of this film when I was like coming into this. And so I found a lot of details about Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon getting ready for this role, because there's another physical comedy aspect of this that really impressed me when I watched it. And that's their ability to run in heels.
Yeah. Right.
Like there are multiple times where I feel like Tony Curtis like couldn't stand properly in heels. Like he always looked like he was about to fall over, but running, they got that down. Like, but one, they were actually trained by what is written on Wikipedia as a female impersonator, which I'm pretty sure is just a drag queen, named Barbette, who trained them in how to portray femininity, but and how to like walk in heels and all of that. But also they spent weeks just trying to get the makeup to look right for it. And their way of testing it out was they continually walked into like women only areas. So they'd like walk into like the bathroom's antechamber, like, before you get to the stalls where like there's usually like a lot of mirrors and stuff to do makeup in, and would pretend to fix their lipstick to see if women said anything about them being in there. And when no women said anything, they were like, great, we pass as women. And all I can think about is, you know what? I've never like once questioned this in a bathroom. Like this whole thing about like men being in female bathrooms, I don't think any woman has actually cared about before. Like, I have a hard time believing that women didn't see them applying makeup over their makeup that they were already wearing in the bathroom and said, this is completely normal women activity.
Well, and were they in this full like white face when they were doing that?
Because I don't know, because like I think this is like with the lighting on it, but like in the photo where it's everybody in the thing, like it's definitely too light. But like, I don't know. I was like, I watched this movie. I can't imagine that they walked into a women's restroom and the women were like, yes, normal women.
Yeah, that could be the photo on the left could be from the flash, because I know a lot of translucent powders appear more white than they are.
Yeah. But I just think that's a really funny way of testing your makeup. And a week just to get the makeup right.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
I was going to say, I saw a video about the making of this thing on YouTube, and they have some footage of Barbette, the drag performer. And it's pretty striking because it's, it's Barbette was basically wearing women's makeup, but had his shirt off because I think he identified as male. He was just a drag performer. And it's pretty striking to see someone in the 1950s doing that, just because it seems like such a modern thing. And apparently like drag performances were strictly illegal in most areas of the country. But the video also said that Barbette eventually left the production because he just thought that the two actors, Tony and Jack Lemmon, just weren't getting it. Like, so Barbette apparently got frustrated and just left.
I mean, female impersonation has been a art form since the vaudeville days, so it wasn't uncommon.
And I actually had
it happened a lot more during like Hays Code era like this than we think. Like in like USO shows and on variety shows on television stuff.
Yeah, and I have like two thoughts here. The first being that on the point of Barbette, one, I would highly recommend that you actually look up photos of him, because I wanted to include one on here, but the only one that I could find was a photo of him getting dressed. And I was like, I don't like this, but some of like the costume designs that he does as Barbette are like phenomenal and like fantastic like drag outfits, like full Rococo style things that are just awesome. But also on the note of like the whole like drag queen during this time frame, I think it's interesting that took place in 1929, because a lot of my understanding of like Prohibition era kind of things was you weren't just finding like booze in these underground places. A lot of them were gay clubs.
There was a lot more like debauchery going on than just drinking. Yeah.
So I find it hard to believe that like in 1959, when this movie was released, I think it would have been like a weird thing to see. I don't think it would have been a weird thing to see in 1929.
But that's the interesting thing, is that it kind of carried through. And I think calling themselves female impersonators versus anything else kind of helped to,
right,
ease the public sentiment about that style of performance.
Yeah. Speaking of which, is this movie sexist or not? Like, is this pro-woman or is this anti-women? I am genuinely curious about your opinions.
One of the things that caught my ear, and I was surprised, I did not expect it in a film from this time, but they actually take a moment to address how hard it is being a woman when they're going into the hotel. And both of them say something to the effect, they acknowledge the fact that women have it difficult. And I was surprised to hear that, because usually in films of this period, when you have cross-dressers, it's always played for, look at the guy, the man dressed as a woman. Bob Hope, I don't know how much Bob Hope made over doing shit like that. So I always thought that Tootsie was the first film where they actually broke that ground, where they said, oh, look, it is hard being a woman. So I was surprised. I thought it was very progressive that was acknowledged in any way in this film.
Yeah, I thought about Tootsie and Mrs. Doubtfire.
Yeah,
I thought about Mrs. Doubtfire as we were talking about, especially the part where I think didn't he light the fake boobs on fire, or the boob stuffing on fire? Oh my gosh, there's just so many of those moments.
I'm so on the fence about whether or not this movie is sexist or not, or like where it falls on that line, because it does like briefly talk about like especially how hard it is to be a woman trying to like find place in music, like not being able to make it in male bands. And so this is like what they have been reduced to, is kind of the vibe that they have as the female band. They definitely talk about a lot of like the way that men treat women, and like how, Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon like are suddenly experiencing this from the other side kind of thing. But at the same time, I don't think this movie passes the Bechdel test. And if it does, it's just when they're talking about alcohol. So
yeah, I doubt very many movies from this time period do pass the Bechdel test.
It's yeah.
But I do find this one a little bit more progressive for its time. It's kind of the way that I view watching like the old Star Trek series, where it's not by our standards progressive at all, but for the time it was pushing the envelope a bit.
Yeah.
It still talks down to women a lot. And I think that one of the interesting aspects that they decided to add into this movie is like the whole mob section of it, that one is not in Fanfare to Love, the thing that's based on, which is just two men taking a job with an all-female band because they need money. this has added, like, they're going into essentially their own mandated witness protection program. But there is so much lore involving these mafia bosses. There's like Little Bonaparte and Spats, and I wanted to look into it more. I don't know why. Is it Little Bonaparte that's deaf? This like deaf mobster, and I'm like, there's no further reference to this. And I think it's so interesting that they like spent a lot of time with this mob aspect of it.
Yeah, because for an American audience, you need to have more of a conceit for them dressing up as women.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because I think in the video that I watched, they said that Billy Wilder even said this, that he added the mob thing for exactly that reason. But I also wanted to say how interesting it is that this movie takes place 30 years before 1959, and it just seems like such a different world. Because I definitely agree that the 1920s seemed like they were much freer, and then the culture became more conservative, and the drag aspects and a lot of the other aspects become more surprising. But it's interesting because if someone were to make a movie set 30 years before now, it would be 1995. It's kind of a sobering thought. It's just weird that the passage of time works that way, because the 90s don't really seem that different from now.
And
Look, when you say 30 years ago, I still think 1970s.
I know, same. Well, and the kids now are calling them the 1900s,
which is fantastic, and they absolutely should.
The late 20th century at our community college. hip hop class, because it was.
Yeah, it is really interesting how the fact that this is a movie that was made in 1959 but takes place in like the 1920s really shows kind of what the 1950s thought about the 1920s.
Right.
Yeah, I had never really thought of it as like a period piece before, but it is, because like our frame of reference when I watched this in like the 90s, the 50s were 40 years prior to that. So for me, it's like, oh, it's just an old movie, but it is for the time a period film.
Yeah. And it's really bonkers to think about it that way.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's bonkers to think about old period pieces.
Yeah. Well, and in my frame of reference, it's like 1950s, 1920s, whatever. They're both old.
Yeah.
So I always had the bonkers thing, and this is off topic, but with the book series Outlander, which is now like a really popular TV show as well. It's a time travel, but it starts in 1940 and then goes back to like 1776. And every single time I think about that, like my brain doesn't work with time travel that way. And I'm having like the same reaction to like this being a period piece from the 50s. Like it doesn't make sense.
I just think on the sexism thing, and I don't know that Billy Wilder was trying to thread the needle, but it seems like he did thread the needle between, and of course, the Hays Code and all that shit that, having to deal with that. But just the fact that they even addressed the difficulty of women in the time. And these women are the women in the band. Marilyn Monroe seems to be the one most slavishly trying to find a guy, a rich guy to get married. But these all seem to be very relatively independent women. They're not, they're not all, or maybe it's just they've accepted their lot in life. I don't know, but they're working, they're independent. And it just seems, even though it's just slight and subtle, I think it's a very progressive film.
I want to know more about this Florida hotel that wanted an all-female big band and would only accept all-female big band. Like
Yeah.
it's gearing towards a very, very it's catering to a type.
They didn't
Right.
really explain that. And you have to be under 25 and blonde.
Yeah.
And blonde. I guess they all are blonde, aren't they? In this picture.
Yeah, kind of, except I don't think either Tony Curtis or Jack Lemmon were blonde wigs. I think they're like red and like light brown. And you can even tell in this picture, like their wigs are so much darker than everybody else. And I didn't think about that until this point. And I know it's just like a thing to make them stand out from the crowd, but it is a kind of a weird group to get together. I also thought it was weird that there was a ukulele for some reason in it, but I learned that that's actually like it's not as uncommon as I thought it was.
Yeah. And the thing about the colors in the scene, particularly the wigs that Curtis and Lemmon are wearing, you can control the way those read on black and white film through the use of filters,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
which is why they read blonde.
I kind of wanted to go back to the whole 1920s being more progressive in a weird way than the 1950s as far as this goes, mostly because they had a lot of really weird reactions to this movie when it first came out. They had test audiences and like half of the audience walked out before it like got started. Like they bailed a lot on it.
Wow.
And the people that stuck around were like, no, this is incredibly funny. And so Wilder said that maybe this is just the wrong neighborhood to have it shown in. At any rate, I don't panic over one preview. It's a hell of a movie. And then when they held it in the future, they held it in different areas and they had very distinct reactions depending on what area was viewing the movie, except for Kansas. The entire state of Kansas banned the film from being shown in the state because cross-dressing was too disturbing for Kansas.
That's not too surprising. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if like Bible Belty areas of the United States probably were, restrictive of the screenings of it and all that.
I am not joking when I say that was a direct quote from the legislation that the Kansas state government issued, was that this movie was too disturbing for Kansans, which is kind of bad for Kansans, I guess. I don't know. But
yeah, that says a lot about them.
yeah, I was like, poor Kansans. I used to live in Kansas. But also on that note, they had so much laughter that they had to reshoot some of the scenes to make room for it. Specifically, when Jack Lemmon like announced his engagement, Osgood, he's playing the maracas in that scene because when they recorded it the first time, people were laughing so hard they were missing the dialogue. So they had to build in a thing for him to do so that they could laugh and then stop laughing to hear the next line.
That's a great scene.
I was cackling the whole time I was watching this afternoon. I also really needed the laughs.
Yeah, and then going back to the progressiveness of it, the entire thing between Daphne and Osgood is just...
Yeah, well, and it's like Jack Lemmon's character doesn't really care, about, of course, I'm Daphne, I'm marrying a man, of course. And then like at the end when he comes out and tells him, but I'm a man, and he's like, oh, nobody's perfect. Like that in itself is very progressive for that time.
Fun fact for that is that was actually a working line. They put that in and were like, surely we'll find something funnier. And then they never did. So that wasn't even supposed to be the way the movie ended. They just couldn't think of another way. But Osgood is the best character in this. And I think we can all agree.
I loved him.
Also, what's the actor's name? Joey Brown.
I was trying to remember. He was also in It's a Mad, 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 Mad World, or one of those old movies. My dad loved that movie.
His face is the most expressive face I've ever seen, and I enjoy it every time I see it.
Oh, his laughs.
Yeah.
I can't do it, but
No one can. He would have made a very impressive Joker.
Oh my god,
Oh,
it kills me. It just
so
kills me.
let's talk about the Joker. Did anybody? I had to go over this. I had to go, but the scene in the photo that you had in the beginning when we first came on. Okay, so this scene when Jack Lemmon has his little monologue, I'm looking at him and he's doing things with his hands and with his face and his mouth, and I had to go back. I said, "Who the fuck is that? I know that character," and I had to go back like 10 times, and then I said, "Heath Ledger, the Joker." Did anybody else see that other than me?
I did not see that.
No.
Just
No,
Oh
I
my
the
God. Go
Well-
back and watch that sequence. I swear to God, Heath Ledger never mentioned using Jack Lemmon for the Joker, but I swear to God, he was totally riffing on Daphne in this film.
Yeah.
I will have to look into that because I mean I could see that, and quite honestly, Daphne does have some very Joker-esque qualities about her.
I kind of see it now that now that we mentioned this. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely thought about the Joker while watching him, just because of there are a bunch of scenes where his face just looks white with like the dark lips, and he's like cackling in weird places. But I have to admit, I did not think of Heath Ledger. I just thought of the Joker in general. But
Oh, I
Yeah,
thought
it's
specifically of Heath Ledger's Joker. It was driving me nuts. I was like halfway through the film and I went all the way back to this scene. I have to figure this out. And I just kept running it over and over again. And it was like, it's on the tip of my tongue. What the fuck is it? And I'm just, ah!
I
Gotcha.
guess Jack Lemmon was like so comfortable playing Daphne that like it led into the character so much, because it was like he put on the clothes and the wig and just like ran with it and was enjoying the time so much that they had a problem getting him out of like the costume. Like he just wanted to be Daphne the entire shooting. Tony Curtis, on the other hand, actually had a huge problem playing a woman, and in fact couldn't get the voice right, to the point where he uses his own voice while playing Junior, but the voice of Josephine is actually done by a professional named Paul Frees and was
Really?
overdubbed into it, which I did not notice until I read about it later. So they did a fantastic job.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, me
it sounds
neither.
like Tony Curtis.
It
Paul-
does. Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, so
Paul
he
Frees is very famous for doing all the Disney voices at Disneyland
Yep.
and characters in the films. That's Paul Frees, big voice actor of the time.
Yeah, so they mixed their voices together in order to get the voice high enough for like a consistent Josephine voice throughout the entire thing, because Tony Curtis just kept slipping in and out of various voices while doing it.
Yeah, like he was playing three different people, the rich guy, and I guess two different people.
And then Joe
Besides,
and
Joe, Josephine, and Junior. Yeah, 3.
yes. Yeah, three people, yeah, technically. And the pursing of the lips though that he does, I don't know. I can't. I love it. I love it. This in this picture.
Let me see what else other fun little tidbits of things. I can't go through this entire thing. Oh, actually, let me say this one before I move on, because I feel like this is going to lead into a whole discussion. So let me just get this small one out of the way. But Tony Curtis actually returned in 2002 to the stage performance of Some Like It Hot, performing as Osgood. And I think that is fantastic.
No
so
way,
he
that is fantastic.
played on the stage as Osgood?
Yeah, because they the movie was adapted into a Broadway musical that was called Sugar in 1970 something. And then after it had its run, stayed off for a while, and then came back as the same show, same song set, same script, same everything, but under Some Like It Hot. And that is something that is actually still on tour to this day. It was on Broadway for a while. It's been on tour. My parents have seen it. I have not. But in 2002, Tony Curtis played the role of Osgood in the stage musical. And
You know,
that's very adorable to me.
Yeah, that's cute. I like that.
Me too.
Uh,
I'm sorry, I just want to jump here since we're talking about stage. So I was thinking about the fact that I enjoyed this film more than I enjoy any other Billy Wilder comedies. And the vast majority of his comedies, particularly during this period, his glory years, were all based on plays. This was the only one that was not based on a play. And this is the only one where it holds together as a film for me, in my opinion. I know everybody loves The Apartment and they love all those other. I can't sit through them, but this one actually works. And I have to think it must be that the structure is more conducive to. It's already written for film, so to transfer it into another film seems easy. Where, with the exception of The 7-Year Itch, which feels like a play but works, the rest of his films at that time, including some of the dramas like Stalag 17, still it feels like there's a lot of fat on there that needs to be trimmed off. And Some Like It Hot doesn't seem to have that problem.
it's very, very concise.
That's
Is
a
it
good
2
word.
hours?
It's very tight compared to the other comedies. There's no fat on there. Everything moves in a sequence from one scene to the next in a way that the films based on plays don't.
And it's a 2-hour movie, right? It's 2
Yeah,
hour
it is,
runtime?
which is
Okay.
pretty long for that time frame.
Yeah, it is. For a no fat movie, yeah.
Oh, I don't have one specifically of just Marilyn, but I feel like we've somehow managed to get almost 40 minutes into this call without having a deep discussion about Marilyn Monroe, and that feels weird. So let's bring it into Marilyn Monroe, who was already a pretty big star at this time, was in fact the big name on this. Initially, they wanted Mitzi Gaynor to play Sugar, and then they wanted Frank Sinatra, who did not show up for the lunch meeting to be asked to play in this movie, and Anthony Perkins, who they didn't pick because they thought he looked too androgynous, which is not something that I would say for Anthony Perkins, but hey. But so they decided to move away from them. They hired Tony Curtis, and they had Jack Lemmon on the script, but they didn't really want him because they wanted a big name attached, and they were really holding out for Frank Sinatra. And then Marilyn Monroe said that she wanted to do it, and so they just hired Jack Lemmon immediately so that she could be the big headline to bring people into the seats.
Yeah,
Can't see Sinatra doing cross-dressing.
Yeah. Very different movie, very different vibe.
I can't see him accepting a role where he would cross-dress because he's like the manly man. He would never cross-dress.
Yeah.
That's probably why he didn't show up for the meeting.
Maybe.
Wasn't this like the height of her career practically?
This was the height of her career. It was a rough time in her life, though. So she was convinced to take this role because she had just had a miscarriage, and her husband, Arthur Miller, decided that she needed a distraction. She was pregnant while she filmed the movie. She was 4 months pregnant, and then she miscarried again immediately after the filming ended. So this was a really rough time frame for Marilyn Monroe.
Ouch. I didn't. Also no idea about that.
Also, apparently, she was absolutely awful to work with.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, in the behind the scenes stuff that I watched, Tony Curtis, well, she was constantly flubbing her lines. She had to do 80 takes of one simple scene where she just says, "It's me, Sugar," outside their hotel room door, but it took her 80 tries. And she kept doing that for almost every scene. And so the two main actors just really hated being with her. And there was kind of an infamous moment where someone asked Tony Curtis what it was like to kiss Marilyn Monroe. And he said it was like kissing Hitler. And he said
Wow.
that he later tried to take this back and said that he never said it, but there were multiple witnesses of it on set of him saying it. So then he eventually was like, okay, yeah, I said it.
Damn.
And also Billy Wilder also compared the making of the movie to World War II. So like Hitler and World War II were on their minds because
That sounds stressful.
yeah, and it was like it seems mostly due to Marilyn Monroe, like her unreadiness. But I think if we look at the context of what she was going through and like also being in a lot of pain from endometriosis and like
Endometriosis.
yeah, and like yeah, a bunch of other stress stuff. It's kind of more understandable, but at the same time, I do understand like where these guys were coming from at the time of being
mean,
frustrated that it was
Yeah,
taking
Tim.
her so many takes.
Yeah,
I'm
Tim.
gonna say, I watched some interviews with Billy Wilder, and he talked about it, and other people on the set mentioned that there was one scene different than the one mentioned earlier, where they're in the room and Marilyn Monroe's line is, "Where's the bourbon?" And she kept coming in and saying, "No, or was it, where's the whiskey?" And she would come in and either say, "Where's the bourbon?" or "Where's the scotch?" And she couldn't get, "Where's the whiskey?" She couldn't get that line right. But one of the things Billy Wilder said about it, he said, yeah, it was hard and you had to do like 84 takes with her, but when you got the take right, it was golden. So, he liked what she could bring when she got it right. And it was worth going through all the, and maybe this is him talking afterwards and reflecting on it and trying to put a positive light on it. But what he was saying in this interview was that going through all that trouble was worth it because when she got the line right, it was fantastic.
There
Yeah.
was some pretty. You
Go
go.
ahead. I was just going to say her timing and delivery is great in this movie. I really like the comedic moments with her.
That said, I don't think the acting overall was particularly great. I couldn't stop laughing when
She's not a particularly great actress.
no, not on her part. Although I do have like quite a few notes about her acting on this. But I couldn't stop laughing when they were in the garage and like had everyone lined up against the wall and like the guy was just like, "No, please, spats. No, don't do it. Please, no." And I was like, all right, that's what we're in for here.
Uh-huh.
I have heard different things involving Billy Wilder's, like his things that he said about Marilyn Monroe on the set. I think it was just a rough time for everybody. A lot of the scenes with her and Tony Curtis were actually shot with them separately because it took so many takes that the closer Marilyn got to getting the take right, the worse Tony Curtis did in them. And so they just had to start filming them separately because it would take her so long that everybody else's acting deteriorated. But they also had to... They had to create ways to show her the lines because I do know, I always thought it was funny. The "It's me, sugar" line took 47 takes with her consistently saying, "It's sugar, me."
That would drive me insane. I mean, so I understand.
Yeah. For the where's the bourbon line, they put it in the drawers. Like the line was actually written on a card in the drawer, but she kept forgetting which drawer had it written on it. So
they
she
put it in every
up,
drawer.
Yeah. So they keep having to add it into every drawer.
Oh my goodness.
And also when she's talking on the phone with Junior, when he's in the other room saying that he's calling from offshore, saying that he's leaving, she's reading all of her lines from a blackboard that's off the screen, and you can actually watch her as she's reading the lines. So I don't really blame her. She was having a rough time with this. Her name is kind of what carried this movie like to the theaters and to the fame I think it was to today. But it was a really rough time.
In her defense, Billy Wilder was very demanding in terms of you had to say the line exactly as it was in the script. And if you altered it in any way, he would stop you and he would reshoot. And you had to get the line perfect. He even did this to Tony Curtis, I think, or maybe it was Jack Lemmon. Somebody had a different reading of a line, and they managed to convince him that the line was the way that actor was reading it was the way it actually should be. And Billy finally said, when it was explained to him, Wilder said, okay. And he told his co-writer, he said, change the line to it was like something like the word "oh" in front of a line. He because his co-writer acted as his scriptie as well, which was kind of unusual. But that was
is
the
weird.
relationship they had.
I put the dress up on the screen because I was distracted very much by this dress.
Oh yeah,
Me
it's
too.
a very distracting dress.
It is
Yeah,
an
yeah.
insanely distracting dress. Both of them. They're two different dresses. I did not notice this little heart stamp on the butt cheek.
Me neither.
Neither did I.
The picture on the right, though.
Yeah. No, this dress, I was like, what is this made out of? Is this just pasties under a sheer dress? Like, what am I looking at? And I did not watch most of that scene because I was so distracted by this goddamn dress.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What did you say? I didn't hear any. I didn't share anything after the photo went up. I didn't hear anything you said.
Her nightclub wardrobe in this film is very scandalous.
Yeah.
I didn't
She
remember
wears
that.
lingerie to bed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
Who designed this dress? I don't know. It almost looks familiar in the sense that was it like maybe a famous fashion designer or sort of like an iconic style of that time, maybe the 19.
There
In
is a
20s.
whole thing about it. I can link it to
Hmm.
you, but that's where I found all these photos from. Was like there's actually quite a few articles I could find online about this specific vest. They're done by a designer, Ori Kelly.
Mhm.
But you can find full articles on this dress and just so
Yeah.
I'll have to find some of them and send them to you. But yeah, people have a lot of opinions on these, and there's a lot of information on them.
I hadn't remembered from my previous watch throughs of this film about that. And so it just like remembering the time in which it was made. I was like, whoa, okay.
Almost like a flapper style dress, kind of, sort of.
But I don't know if I've seen a flapper dress that scandalous. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah,
these
no,
are-
the back is very open. Yeah, I was actually noticing that during the movie. I'm like, whoa, yeah.
But is it
Well, very much a
scandalous,
back
or is
dress.
it just play scandalous, where it's like kind of like we had to do in circus, where in order to look like you're wearing nothing, you have to wear like 7 layers of clothing?
Well, I mean, on both of these dresses, and the black one even more so, the back is very open, like Pam said. Like on the black one, it's like almost down to her butt. But on this one, like especially the one on the left, like that top is totally sheer. Like I don't know if the rest of it is, but the top is. Except for
Yeah, when I saw it as a kid, I was like, oh, those are boobs. Yeah. You know.
I know what those are.
Yeah. Right.
Ori Kelly won an Academy Award for his costume design on this film.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean,
Where's
it's,
the guy?
Let's get that distracting dress off the screen.
it's
I was
very,
wondering who the guy in the picture was. Holding
Like
her
if-
hand.
Oh, that's her makeup artist.
Okay,
if you
got it.
have Marilyn Monroe in your film, I mean, you gotta show off her assets, I guess.
Even when she's on the train and they're playing like the song on the train, Something Wild. Boy, she was barely contained.
I thought the ukulele part was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Actually.
Like I said, I thought it was a weird choice to make, but when I looked it up, there were actually a lot of big bands, especially during this time, that used ukulele, and I did not know that.
It was weird but cool. Yeah. Yeah, that is.
A lot
interesting.
might not be the correct word, but there were several.
I've never been a big one of those big Maryland fanatics, but having watched this and 7 Year Itch 2 nights in a row, one thing that I caught, it's difficult to deny her charisma. You know, she has it in spades. And it's not just a physical thing. She just automatically draws your eye. She could just be standing there and not doing anything. And there's something about her beyond the physical that just draws your attention to her automatically.
Mhm. Yeah, she's fascinating. Like, yeah, there's just so much written about her, and she's also tragic figure too.
Yeah, I mean, I know during this time, I mean, she died like 3 years later after this, but during this time period, she was having a real rough go of things. So it's not surprising that she was difficult to work with. Has anyone seen My Week with Marilyn?
No.
It's very good. It gives a good insight into like kind of how she operated during this time period.
She was incredibly smart and like way ahead of her time, and in terms of like progressiveness. It's very unfortunate that we lost her when we did, because I think she would have been like a huge asset to a lot of cultural movements as they moved forward. But she
Yeah.
was a crazy smart person.
Yeah, I was gonna mention, I think she had incredible taste in terms of which scripts she chose. Like she made these classics with Billy Wilder, but also All About Eve, which I think may have been her first movie appearance, where she just has a small role, but still it's a classic film, and she made a huge impression in a very small part. And so, yeah, her script choices were impeccable. And in terms of her smartness, one other bit of context from this time period is that she was actually in a dispute with Paramount Pictures right before this movie, before Some Like It Hot, where she was sick of playing dumb blondes, and Paramount sent her another dumb blonde role. So she rejected it, and she stood up to them after they sued her, and she eventually made her own production company, and then chose this movie to do next after the lawsuit. And so in a way it's another dumb blonde role, but it does show at least a bit of depth, I would say.
Well, it's very tongue in
Yeah,
cheek.
it's
Yeah.
almost a dumb blonde satire.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's like you can't really tell if even the character is serious when she says those things, you know?
Yeah.
Right, it's one of those fine line kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
So we are coming up on an hour here, so I want to make sure that if anybody has any pressing thoughts about this movie that they'd like to discuss, thoughts, feelings.
I just forgot how funny it was. Oh man.
Yeah,
You know,
there are
there's-
tons of classic
Go ahead.
lines.
Go ahead.
But I was, in terms of the script, I was actually surprised when I watched the behind the scenes stuff on YouTube. Apparently, when Billy Wilder cast Jack Lemmon, he had only written 60 pages of the script, and Jack Lemmon thought it was the funniest thing ever. Like he said, he busted a gut and like fell off his chair laughing. But then Billy Wilder surprised him by saying that they would write the rest of the script as they shot it. So, like, a lot of the final parts of the movie were just made up as they went along. Like the gangster part where the guy with the gun comes out of the cake, gangsters and stuff like that. So it was a bit more like flying by the seat of their pants than you might expect from such a well-written movie.
I did not know that.
I'm surprised nobody touched on, this was another thing that made me jump. The minute that Tony Curtis starts speaking as the rich yachting guy, it's, you know, it's so obvious that he's doing, what's his name?
Cary Grant.
Thank you, Cary Grant. And it's like, and it's not like it's sort of Cary Grant, but not really. It was full on Cary Grant.
He calls it his Cary Grant voice.
And that was just, I don't know why I found that so fucking hilarious, because you would think, okay, it's a gag. I get it now, move on. But every time he pulled out that voice, I just thought it was fucking hilarious.
Oh yeah, and he was manipulative about it too. He was like, "Oh no, get out of my view! No, 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 no!" And then until she kept like coming back, and then like, "No, you need to kiss me harder." No, I don't quite feel it yet.
Yeah.
Like, oh, dude. But
Yeah, I love Daphne's response to the voice. Like, nobody talks like that.
where'd you get that phony accent? Oh my god.
And
Dude,
there's
just so many gold moments.
there's a way Jack Lemmon throws himself into the role that Tony Curtis does not. I'm always aware that I'm watching Tony Curtis, but Jack Lemmon keeps the character developing in such a way that I'm always seeing that character. Whereas with Tony Curtis, it's Tony Curtis in a dress, or it's Cary Grant in a sailor suit.
I firmly believe that after this movie ended, because like you end on the boat going out to the yacht, but like honestly, where do their lives go from there? Like, what happens after that? But I am fully convinced that Daphne continues living as Daphne. Like,
Oh my god, they should do a sequel.
like I am convinced that
Oh
is
my
just
God.
the rest of her life is just rich wife Daphne.
It seemed like she was much happier that way. So
She did seem much happier as Daphne.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of that. That's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean,
Versus-
wealth.
Versus
Marrying into wealth.
Josephine, that just did not go well.
And he was the one who was he wanted to get out of the costumes as soon as possible, you know. And Tony Curtis's character just said, "No, we got to keep doing this for a little while longer." And she's the one who he's the one who just totally adopts the character. Which is-
Especially once
Froze a little bit.
I feel like Osgood convinced them. Because I feel like they were on the fence until they got engaged. I think they just had one really good night out and they were like, "Yep, this is me now."
yep.
I love
Ever
how at
have
the
a date
beginning.
so good that you went trans?
Oh, you know. I don't know. Never say never. But
Yeah, no, not yet.
That's one of the things I think this movie stands out from Wilder's other comedies, because usually the characters seem to be very flat and they're obvious caricatures. And these characters actually feel somewhat three-dimensional, Jack Lemmon's character in particular, in a way that I don't think we see in the other Billy Wilder comedies, or even the dramas.
I thought it was funny how Tony Curtis's character was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna go, you know, hit on this hot blonde while you deal with tangoing with Osgood, you know, awkwardly," which at that part was fantastic. The tango or whatever. What is that tango? I think tango.
Oh,
Yeah,
That
they
kind of-
tangoed all
yeah,
night
tango.
long.
I think that music is yeah. He somehow got his friend to deal with that night, you know, while he got Marilyn Monroe.
Not a bad
Yeah. I think it's very apparent from this, just looking at where they were and where they ended up, that not that it's a competition, but if I look at Jack Lemmon's filmography and I look at Tony Curtis, Jack Lemmon was the one who had the greater, more broader skills as an actor. You know, he just such a superb actor, you know, who probably at the very top of his game when he did what was it? I think it was called Save the Tiger from the mid 70s. Just a really fantastic dramatic actor, a fantastic comedic actor. He just has this range that Tony Curtis did not have.
Yeah, Jack Lemmon was still going strong in the 90s because he did Glengarry Glen Ross that year. And yeah, Jack was nominated for an Oscar for this movie, Some Like It Hot, but Tony was not. But yeah, I definitely agree. Like, Jack's performance in this does feel like, I don't know,
Was
just
this movie
more.
nominated for Best Picture that year?
It actually, wasn't it? No, The Apartment was the one he won for Best Picture. I don't think so.
Oh,
I know Wilder won for The Apartment, his next film after this, but I don't know if this one was nominated.
Hold on, I'm looking up the things for the year.
Oh no, where did Derek go?
It was not, but Ben-Hur was out that same year. It kind of
Oh.
Charlton Heston.
the Oscars a little bit. So
Well, at least it won something.
This
Good
was
film. I'm
screened
glad
at
you
the
picked it.
Norris Center.
another fun fact that I learned before we end for the evening is they were filming Porgy and Bess at the exact same time right next door.
Oh, interesting.
So they were visiting each other's sets while they were filming.
Oh no, Derek.
I know Derek left. It's okay because we're going to end now for the evening because we are over an hour. And so I would just like to end by reminding you that for some reason the bellboy just wears a giant key ring around his neck throughout the entirety of it. And I think that is a thing that we should bring back.
Oh yeah, the bellboy. I forgot about him. He was funny too.
It was such a.
Like all the guys were basically like, "Oh yeah, she hit me. I'm digging it. Oh, she's."
It was very similar to this O around Marilyn's neck in this image. Like it was just a humorously large ring of keys that only had like 2 keys on it. But anyways, that's where I'm going to end it for the night. So thank you guys for joining me, and I hope to catch you on the next one.
For sure. This was a fun one.